According to a 2022 UNESCO report, there are about 20 million Nigerian individuals of its approximately 200 million population who are not enrolled in schools. This amounts to 20% of Nigeria's entire population and is more than the overall population of various countries in Africa. Figures from the Universal Basic Education Commission in Nigeria for 2021 reveal that the number of out-of-school children in the age bracket of 6 and 11 years in Nigeria was about 10 million. Now, based on this troubling data, the House of Representatives says it will ensure that 14 million out-of-school Nigerian children are back in school through an intervention framework. The out-of-school children would be trained with relevant skills to become productive with a target of addressing public education by tackling poverty and value gaps. Now, the House of Representatives says its move is aimed at improving access to education for all Nigerian children in line with the aspirations of the Sustainable Development Goals on qualitative and inclusive education for all. Well, joining us via Zoom is the founder and CEO of IA Foundation, Ronke Adeagbo. Good morning. Thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Good morning, Veronica. Nice to be here.
Right. Now, let's begin with your impression of the decision by the House of Representatives to put in this intervention program, looking at the number of out-of-school children that we have, about 20 million of them. The House of Representatives is saying that they will enroll about 14 million of them, and that this project is going to last for 4 years.
Right. It's a welcome development, without a doubt. But as we all appreciate, talk is cheap. The reality of this is we've had this before. I think what we need to be looking at is how did we find ourselves in a situation where 20.2 million of the future generation of Nigeria are on the street? And also, have we got the educational infrastructure to actually put these 14,000 million kids, which they plan to enroll? I mean, UBEC just said last week that they need to build 20,000 classrooms to accommodate students. So what that means is that the educational infrastructure is not there anyway. So if, let's say, peradventure, these 20.2 million students decide to enroll to school, the infrastructure is not there to accommodate them. So it's good to say you want to enroll X number of students, but are you proactively preparing to enroll them? Have you got the infrastructure in place? Have you got the budgetary allocation in place? As you would appreciate, the budget for education this year is just 8.4% of the budget, 8.2% of the budget. The highest that the government have ever spent on education is 8.4% in 2019. UNESCO, UNICEF have always been campaigning that every country must spend at least 15 to 20% of their total budget on education. So there is no prizes for guessing why we find ourselves in this situation. So for me, it's too little, too late. And in my opinion, there are other bigger issues which the government needs to address. I mean, the gentleman that came earlier spoke eloquently about insecurity. You can build all the classes you want in this world. You can drag the kids screaming and shouting to the classrooms. But if you don't address the issue of insecurity, I'm sorry, we'll still be in this place in a couple of years to come. So we need to be more pragmatic and practical about the approach and have a joined-up approach to addressing the issue of out-of-school children.
Well, we understand your concern on the fact that this, like you earlier mentioned, that talk is cheap. But are these measures not important enough to addressing this issue of out-of-school children in Nigeria?
I mean, as I said earlier, it's about being pragmatic about the approach and being intentional. I mean, during the Buhari administration, they introduced what I call the free school meal, school feeding program.
Mm-hmm.
What did that achieve? It did not achieve much, because the issue is that so far we still have insecurity. No matter the carrots you dangle in front of parents, they would not send their children to school. So yes, thanks for saying you want to enroll so many students, What are you doing to address the insecurity in the country to make sure parents are confident to send their kids to school? So it needs to be a joined up approach, making sure the educational infrastructure are there, making sure you've got quality teacher. The data we are reading is saying 40% of the teachers in the classroom are not qualified teachers, right? So we need to address that. And we need to also address the issue of poverty. I mean, my foundation picks children from the street and put them in school. You won't believe it. Apart from paying their fees, we have to buy bags, books, pay their parents, teachers, association fees, pay their graduation fees. Poverty is rife in the land. What is the government doing to support families? I know with this new regime, I think they are a bit educationally friendly than the previous regime, because most of the things they've been saying about education is really music to our ears. A classic example is the Minister of Education said the educational budget is going to be increased by 25%. That's music to our ears. But we are watching to make sure the process of ensuring we reduce the number of out-of-school children is a joined-up approach, and it's very intentional, purposeful, and it's very pragmatic.
Now, I think you need to expatiate on this matter of pragmatic, what you mean by the government being pragmatic, because it says this is aimed at addressing the matter of poverty and addressing the value gap. So if you are saying government is not being pragmatic, what is missing and what should be done in the immediate?
Right, insecurity. Because of insecurity, parents are refusing to send their kids to school. What are we doing to address that? I mean, just last week, as your earlier speaker said, 29 students were kidnapped from a university. These are adults, never mind children in primary and secondary school. Just last week. So what are we doing about that? How can we ensure schools, universities are not soft targets for bandits, for kidnappers? What is the government doing about it? So yes, thanks for telling us that you're going to enroll X amount of students. But I want to know, what are you doing about insecurity? What are you doing to make sure we've got quality teachers in the classroom? What are we doing to make sure educational infrastructure are there? We have enough classes, and to ensure that parents feel very confident to send their kids to school. I want to hear more of that rather than saying we're going to enroll. It's easy to say you're going to enroll, but you can't force a parent to send their kids to school if all these challenges are still there.
But the government would have said it has been putting measures in place to addressing insecurity in the land. And of course, many times we have seen those measures being put in place, especially in the Northeast. But is this not enough to propel many people to send their kids to school?
If that's the case, why did we have kidnapping last week? I mean, just last week, why did we have kidnapping last week? So yes, they're doing, but it's not enough. It's really not enough. After all the instances of kidnapping we had over the last couple of years, kidnapping in schools or in universities should be a thing of the past, because the government would have put through pragmatic and robust security systems in educational institutions to make sure any bandit or any kidnapper would not even attempt to go near a school, because they've put measures in place to deter them from kidnapping those children.
All right. The government is also saying that this program, as it has, initiated or said, is a non-formal accelerated system, alternative schooling programs. Could you perhaps talk to us on this alternative schooling program and non-formal accelerated education, how this fits into addressing the matter of out-of-school children? Yes, we know there are issues that have to be addressed in terms of insecurity, poverty, trying to help build the confidence of parents to return to schools. But how would this build capacity and make these persons that are out of school productive members of the society?
Without a doubt, it's important to make sure within the economy we have the vocational skills and we have the academic skills, no doubt about that. However, children need to have basic education, because even if you want to become a carpenter, you must know how to measure, right? You need basic skills in literacy, right, in numeracy. And as you know, education is free up to GSS 3. So let them at least get that basic education. And maybe when they get to GSS3, they can then move out to the different career paths they want to go to. Whoever wants to be a plumber or wants to be a carpenter, they can be trained in that way. This is well carried out in Lagos State, because in Lagos State secondary schools, when you get to, I think, GSS3, you can then start moving out into the path you want to move to, if it's a vocational skills or if you want to go down the academic route. So that is fine, but let them at least have the basic education, because they need to be able to communicate. If you want to go into business, you need to be able to speak English very well. So let them have that basic skills. And after GSS3, they can start branching out into the various areas of vocational areas they want to branch into.
So how does this address the aspirations of the SDGs, SDGs 4 on quality education?
Yeah, exactly. The emphasis, the operative word there is quality education. You cannot get quality education if you don't have the basic education, if you cannot read and write. So therefore, the emphasis should be on getting that basic education. Children illiteracy should be a thing of the past. A child should be able to communicate well in English and be able to adopt, right? So let them have that basic education first, and then they could do whatever they choose to do. Quality, the emphasis is on quality. And quality is a two-way street. You got to make sure you have quality teachers in the classroom teaching. If we're saying 40% of our teachers teaching our children are not qualified, so it's a case of garbage in, garbage out. What are those teachers teaching the students? I mean, I'll tell you for free, within my organization, we try to recruit some graduates. Most of them were not employable. So the quality of education, needs to be improved on. And how can you improve the quality of education? Ensuring at the basic level, you instill quality education. So the emphasis should be on the basic education to get them to where we want them to get to, and to make sure our graduates and even our vocational, our artisans are employable, and you can actually patronize them. Some of my artisans, which I employ in Nigeria, to communicate with them is a problem in English. So what I have to do is I have to send a voice note message to them. And when they communicate with me, they reply with a voice note message because they cannot type in English. How can we have that? That is unacceptable. So the emphasis should be on the basic education. The subjects of this world should be proactive, working with the government, working with the executives to make sure we've got basic education for every child in Nigeria. Education matters. Every child should matter. Every child should have access to education. Now, I also said earlier about parents not wanting to send their kids to school. Now, it's a two-way street as well. The government must put mechanisms in place, even legislation in place, to make sure any parents that does not send their child to school, there will be a penalty. Because that's the way it works in the UK. If you don't send your child to school, the parent will be penalized for it. So therefore, you are working from two sides. So the parents as well are sort of forced to send their kids to school, and the government as well, the representatives who are doing the legislation, are also putting the laws in place to make sure these kids go to school. Because you can't, at the moment, you can't force those kids to go to school. But if you put the right legislation in place, the parents will have no choice but to send their kids to school. But it must be within the right environment, within a secured environment, with good teachers and good educational facilities.
Indeed, it's obvious that the House of Reps and even the government has its work cut out for them if they want to follow through with this program that it is putting in place. But let's say the government has put in all the measures talking about addressing insecurity, addressing matters of confidence for on the part of the parents, and ensuring that the right legislation is put in place so they send their words to school. Is 4 years enough to addressing this matter of out-of-school children where we have such a huge number?
I mean, I was listening to the interview of the new Minister of Education, and I must say I was quite, Mr. Tai Maman, I was quite impressed because he's not deluding himself. He's set himself a target for 4 years. He knows it's not possible to get those 20.2 million in school within 4 years. But what he's prepared to do is to put mechanisms in place to start reducing that number. And to me, that is being very pragmatic. So I don't think 4 years is enough, because what we are dealing with is years of underinvestment in education, right? If you've been spending less than double digits on education over the last years, You can't now catch up on that within 4 years. It's just not possible. Even in terms of building the educational infrastructure, it takes time, right? So in my opinion, 4 years, yes, you can start making inroads. You can start denting that figure, but there's no way you're going to get those 20.2 million children off the streets in 4 years' time.
Why do you think there's no way we can get them out of the streets in 4 years' time?
Because we just, it's all about, as I said earlier, the budgetary allocation. What we are allocating to education is not enough. We need to build schools. We need to employ qualified teachers. All this costs money.
And don't we have that now? Don't we have
At the-
qualified teachers in schools?
As I said, the statistics we're looking at is saying 40% of the teachers in the classroom at the moment are not qualified. So you need to invest in teacher training, right? That takes time to produce a teacher, right? Because as we know, we've got this issue of Japa syndrome. Teachers, nurses, doctors are fleeing the country like a sinking ship. Therefore, we are losing out on even the qualified teachers. They are leaving in droves. So what can we do to stem, the flight of teachers? And what are we doing to invest in training more teachers to make sure there's no gap in terms of the number of qualified teachers required in the classroom? What are we doing about that? So yes, you want to enroll the students, but those students need to be taught by a teacher. And we are saying to you that we are hemorrhaging teachers. So what is the government going to do about that? Because I'm not hearing anything about that.
That's the big question with regards to what the government is going to do with regards to those who will pass on the needed knowledge to these persons. But what happens where the issues you have raised in terms of addressing insecurity, in terms of our budget, looking at increasing our budgetary allocation for education, if we do not see that happening and not much is done with regards to this matter of addressing out-of-school children, where does that leave us as a country?
I don't even want to think about it. Because as you know, I'm saying I don't want to think about it. It gives me nightmares, basically. I mean, this is one of the reasons which prompted me to set up my foundation, IU Foundation, because just seeing the number of out-of-school children keeps me awake at night, as I always say. And that was why I had to do what I had to set up the foundation. Without a doubt, if we don't pay attention to this issue, Nigeria is sitting on a keg of powder. It's a ticking time bomb. And we're already experiencing it. I can tell you for free that the insecurity challenges we are facing at the moment in Nigeria is due to the fact that we neglected some children ages ago, right? They were on the streets, we neglected them. They don't have employable skills, so they can't earn a living. Therefore, they resort to crime. So therefore, if you now have even more children on the streets, not going to school, not getting education, they will not become economically active. Therefore, they will resort to crime. So this insecurity we are seeing is just the beginning. It will explode. So if we don't want that to explode, rather than spending so much money on securing the country, if we spend money on educating the people, they will be equipped and they will get themselves a job or set up a business rather than resort to criminality, right? So in my opinion, Nigeria also, we need to power the country. Human capacity, right? Human capacity, we need to make sure we have the right skill sets to power the economy. So if 20.2 million have no education, and they are the ones that are going to be the adults in future, what kind of economy are we going to have if our population are not educated? How can we take our rightful place in the Committee of Nations if our children are not educated? Also, if education, poverty, if you're not educated, the chances is that you're going to spiral in poverty. So if you get educated, the chances is that you will take your family out of education. What I normally say is that in IU Foundation, when we educate one child, we are taking that child's family out of poverty. So by educating 100 children, we are taking 100 families out of poverty. So if we want to reduce the poverty in Nigeria, we need to make sure we emphasize on education.
Right.
Also, corruption will go down. If we educate people, they will be employed and corruption will actually reduce. So it's a silver bullet that will solve most of the problems in Nigeria.
And that's a fine place to leave the conversation. Ronke Adeagbo, founder, CEO, IA Foundation. Thank you for your time on the program.
And thanks for having me.
Right.